Hello everyone, and today we're going to be breaking down the August 2022 metagame because there are quite a few changes coming up, and we want to discuss how those changes are going to impact the currently top performing decks. Now, you can see here from the data in front of you, there's quite a disparity when it comes to the top performing decks. So this is the top 10 finishing decks within August. Now, finishing means any sort of major diamond appearances, wins in tournaments, anything like that. The data come from masterduelmeta.com, so you can see that there's quite a big disparity from even just 1 until 10. 1 being Prank Kids, the Adventure Prank Kids with 126 finishes, down to Triple D, which I'm surprised made it into the top 10, but there it is, sitting at 31 finishes. Now, are these 10 decks going to be the most popular or most powerful decks? No, they will not be the most powerful decks. That would be more along the lines of the tier list. But this video is more so talking about what you're going to see during your ranked experience and what you're going to be seeing more often. And more specifically, how those things are going to change, because as we know, the ban list was announced, we went over it in a previous video, and it's going to impact pretty much every deck on this list. Is it going to make them all, is it going to cripple all of these decks? Probably not. They're still going to be pretty decent, and people are already adapting their usage to the new ban list rules. However, it is overall going to force some changes and weaken a lot of them, some more than others, and we're going to get to that. So we're going to break these down one by one. Of course, we're going to start off by going into the Adventure Prank Kids. So Adventure Prank Kids, we knew that their hits on the list here was most prominently the Meow Meow Moo, which is a very key part of their combo. They always played it at 2, as we can see, even after the changes and people started changing how they're playing the deck. Still 52% of recent finishes are playing it at 2. Some people have adapted their approach to take this deck list, for example, which is completely ban list compliant. With the new requirements, you can see that this is a pretty good list. So, you know, they've got the 1 Fusion Destiny, so they're hurt by Fusion Destiny being nerfed, they're hurt by Celestial being taken out, they're hurt by the Crossout Designator being brought down, because you'll see in previous versions of the deck they were playing more copies of Crossout. There you go, there's 2 in this one. So they were playing more Crossout, they were playing more Meow Meow Moo. However, people are still currently adapting their approach to it. They're playing things like Totally Awesome, which you will summon off of double dropsies, so that's pretty neat. So they're adapting. They are weaker overall, but they will be sort of learning to cope with the changes pretty well. Adventure Prank Kids are still going to be a dominant force. You are going to see them a lot, but they have sort of had their wings clipped just a little bit. With the weakening of a couple of their key engines. So Adventure Prank Kids will continue to thrive. They are by no means out of the metagame at all. That brings up the Influenza. Now, Influenza have actually been knocked off of the tier list, so they're no longer on the tier list, which I'll cover off for you now briefly. So here's the current best decks in the game. I say that in quotation marks. It is an accurate measurement of all of the best decks in the game. We've got quite a lot of tier 3 contenders. This is where Influenza was, but it has been knocked off of its spot, and the hits to this deck in the ban list are certainly not going to help that. You're seeing Prosperity was played at 3 in a lot of these deck lists. You had Crossout Designator was very popular in a lot of these deck lists as well, because it was how the deck worked around hand traps. So there is quite a lot of hits to this deck, and it is going to be a lot weaker, including, of course, things like Vanity's Emptiness being banned is a huge hit as well. So this deck has lost at least, you know, quite a few cards. We're going to pick out a random one here. There you go, there's Vanity's Emptiness, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards taken out of this deck right away. So it is quite a large hit. Now this one's playing Small World and stuff here as well, which is pretty cool. I like this guy's deck. But this is going to be one of the decks that's most heavily impacted by the changes, I would say, because one of its primary factors was it was very easy to floodgate your opponent. Vanity's Emptiness was a huge card for this deck because, well, it doesn't special summon, so you might as well lock your opponent out of it. Crossout was big. Pot of Prosperity is going to knock a lot of consistency off of this deck as well, instead of being able to dig through the top 6 of their deck completely free of charge and just dig one out. So a lot of really sort of positive changes. Our Influenza are going to get hit. They're not the most powerful deck in the metagame. People hate them, and I get it. I don't like playing against them myself, but they are not that strong anymore now that people sort of know what they're doing to get around them, and these changes are definitely not going to help them in any way, shape or form. This deck is going to continue to fall. It's still extremely powerful and very viable. As you can see, the second most finishes when it came to August 2022 at 92 overall finishes for the month. We are definitely still going to be seeing Flowenderies moving into September, but it is going to be to a much lower degree. Just so you're all prepared for that. It's not just disappearing off the face of the earth, it's still going to be around. Speaking of wishing things would disappear, we have Eldritch. Eldritch, of course, having been a extremely powerful deck, virtually always on the deck, the tier list all the way back to the game's release. It has been hurt. It has really been hurt. You know, it has a few of its primary cards knocked down. Let's look at a previous example. You know, it has Imperial Order taken off of it. Some of them were playing Vanity's Emptiness, although it wasn't too common. So Imperial Order has been taken off of them. They've got double power of Prosperity. Now they cannot play that. A lot of Eldritch preferred to play Extravagance anyway, but Prosperity was still a very powerful option for them. They can't play Emptiness. They have one of their skill drains taken off them. So the deck is being hurt. It's being hit quite hard. It's not crippling, of course. The deck not being able to play Imperial Order is a big deal. It doesn't really care too much about the Pot of Prosperity ban because it's going to play Extravagance now instead, which, you know, you could argue is even better. A lot of them are already playing Extravagance. Emptiness, again, not many of them played. It was played, but not many. Imperial Order, of course, being the big one. So this deck is not going to suffer too much as a result of the ban list. There's not really very much going on that it cares too much about. So Eldritch, you're going to be seeing it just as much, if not even more, with this upcoming season. So prepare to be seeing a lot of Eldritch around. Still a very, very powerful deck. Next we have the two Tenyi decks. So we have Adventure Tenyi and Sword Soul Tenyi, which is basically just two versions of the same deck. The Adventure Tenyi is a lot more sort of combo oriented. So this deck here is going to suffer. It is going to suffer from a few different of the nerfs, the most prominent one being the hit to Crossout Designator. Crossout Designator was a huge problem in this deck because it played a lot of key cards and key engines that you could use Crossout not only to stop hand traps, but also to prevent your opponent from playing the counter in the mirror match. So Crossout Designator was traditionally played at 2 or 3, you'll see playing at 2 here. There's not a lot of other hits to it, so this deck's still going to be pretty powerful, probably more powerful than even before. Yes, the Crossout nerf hurts it, but at the same time it no longer needs to worry about its opponent playing Crossout Designator. So it is still going to be just as powerful as it was, if not even more so, given the fact that everything around it that it's competing against is now going to be somewhat weaker. So Adventure Tenyi is in a very, very good spot. And then we have Sword Soul Tenyi, which in a similar regard is only really hurt by the Crossout nerf. It wasn't really playing any of the other banned cards. Some people were playing Anaconda. So they were, again, we haven't really seen much of it. Here's a forbidden list here. That's simply too many Crossout Designators. So yeah, this deck isn't going to be hurt too much. Sword Soul Tenyi, again, it's not going to go down. And the thing you need to realize is that not only is it not going to go down, because everything else is generally getting weaker, this means that this deck may actually see itself increase in usage and be a little bit more powerful than before. It's already tier 3. We have quite a lot of decks at tier 3 at the minute. So the metagame is quite open, it's quite sort of flexible at the moment with so much going on and so many properly viable decks that the Sword Soul deck and the Adventure Tenyi deck I think are going to pick up even more. Then we have Virtual Worlds. Virtual Worlds have been hurt. They have had their feelings hurt. They're not in a good mood about it. We have not seen any top finishes from these guys since August, since the 26th. Nobody really knows what to do with this deck now that its big boss monster VFD is being banned. The True King of all Calamities is being forbidden. There are also a couple of other little hits, Crossout Designator, Pot of Prosperity, that this deck sort of occasionally played. Most of the decks did play Crossout at more than one. So no one, as far as we can see, has really figured out what to do with Virtual Worlds yet. I dare say it is going to return. It's still a pretty viable deck, still having Shen Shen, still having, you know, room for all these level 9 and 10 synchros, so it's not as if it's going to be dead, but we're going to need to think of a different endgame, because the whole point of this deck was summoning VFD with your trap card, your Chi-Chi, and then passing it back to your opponent to then take advantage of Shen Shen and stuff on the follow-up. So it's in a very interesting position, we'll say. We don't know for sure if Virtual Worlds is going to come back as a viable competitor. I would be shocked if it didn't. I would be shocked if there wasn't another powerful way of playing this deck. But it is certainly going to be taking a major left turn here. So very curious to see what happens to Virtual Worlds with the upcoming weeks and days. So moving then into the next one, which was Live Twins. I love seeing Live Twins up on these lists here. 45 top finishes. Live Twins are loving it. What they are not loving, however, is the nerf to Crossout Designator. Crossout Designator was played at multiple copies in virtually every version of Live Twins prior to this. So again, you're seeing multiple copies here. It's also not going to be appreciating the DPE hits to the Predator Plant engine. It looks like that deck, that version of the deck has been getting played less and less. So maybe it's not going to be that big of a deal. I know a lot of them did like playing the Predator Plant, but it hasn't been seeing play in quite some time now. Since the release of Trouble Sunny gave the deck its own win condition. So, you know, it's not going to be suffering too much as a result of this. The only real hit to it is going to be the Crossout Designator. So this is going to very negatively impact the deck's ability to play through hand traps, which was one of the big things. The deck is somewhat susceptible to hand traps, with it having very limited starters, but at the same time, up until now, it's been able to play through tons of them with the, with the Designator playing at 3 or 2 in most cases. It's still going to be very strong. It's still going to be just as aggressive. It's still going to have tons and tons of room for hand traps. It's still going to have really strong starters. So I would, again, this deck's going nowhere. This is going to be still one of the top finishing decks for September. I would be shocked to see anything to the contrary, but we'll just have to wait and see how heavily the Crossout nerf hits everything, because that's quite a big hit, honestly, because everything in its mother plays Crossout Designator at least 2. So having this card limited down to 1 is really going to impact. It's curious that they limited this card, but Call by the Grave is still at 2. I would have expected it to be the other way around. But again, that's neither here nor there. I suppose Crossout more heavily impacts Imperm as well, I suppose, which is the big difference. But yeah, again, just another one of those decks where its consistency is going to be hurt by the Designator nerf. But either way, it's still going to be around, still a very powerful deck. Then we have the Adventure Combo deck. Now this is the initial Adventure deck that everyone was sort of playing, you know, normal summon Sangan, link off into something like Salomon Great Almirage, that will search Arborea, and then you sort of, you know, combo off from there, and it sort of goes off the rails a wee bit. It is basically just the Aurora Dawn engine and Adventure engines baked into one deck. It's nothing really special. Again, it's still very powerful, because again, it's 2 very powerful engines. This is based entirely around consistency. There's not a lot of simple ways of playing it. However, virtually every version of the deck has been playing cards that will need changed. So Crossout Designator in this case needs reduced. In the other cases, we're seeing the DPE cards are going to be needing to change, so no longer able to play Celestial and Fusion Destiny at 2. So these guys are going to need to change up their decks a little bit, as well as their Crossout here as well. So it looks like most of them are playing Crossout at around 2, which is going to have to change. Again, not going to be a massive hit to the deck. It is just going to be slightly annoying. This guy's list is nuts, but this is the sort of thing you'll be looking at. This thing being nuts, it's basically level 3 spam, the deck. So that's basically what it is. It's going to be very curious, again, to see the deck. This deck isn't going to struggle. It's going to learn to play Crossout at 1. It's going to, you know, take the hit to the DPE engine. It's fine. It's still going to be around, and it's still going to be just as powerful, given the context, again, that everything else is losing these same resources. So very, very strong deck still. Next we have Sky Strikers. Sky Strikers is cool. I've never been the biggest fan of Sky Strikers. It's a bit slow for me. The deck is slow, but again, it's still extremely powerful, grinding down your opponent, negating them with Widow Anchor, the constant consistency in searching off of Engage, being able to recycle itself, having poppage here, you know, your Hornet drones making it even more consistent, making your Link monsters better. It is going to suffer slightly with the DPE hits, you know, where its Fusion Destiny is being reduced and no longer being able to play Celestial, and it seems like a few of them are also playing Prosperity. Yep, here you go, Prosperity at 3. No Crossout Designator in that list. I was expecting to see Crossout. But yeah, Pot of Prosperity again being played at 2. So the biggest thing seemed to be definitely the DPE hits and the Pot of Prosperity. So the Pot of Prosperity gave this deck a ton of consistency. So it did. It wasn't played in every instance, but it was played quite a lot. Again, played a 3 here as well. Again, no crossout, which I find very interesting. But yeah, DPE hits, Pot of Prosperity hits, really sort of big against Sky Strikers, but it's just going to hurt the consistency of the deck. It's not going to change the fact that it's very powerful. So expect to continue to see Sky Strikers around. They're going nowhere. And the final deck on our list is Triple D, which I was surprised by. Again, I put up a video recently on the channel. Didn't actually do all that well, to be honest, but DDD seems to be on the rise, and we're going to be seeing this going into the new metagame, and this deck is going to be virtually completely unimpacted by the ban list. The only thing that some people were playing Prosperity, you know, Cross-Out Designator of course, but these were not core cards to the deck, so they're not going to be, the deck isn't going to be suffering basically at all. The Cross-Out Designator was useful in the deck, but you didn't have too much room for like loads of different hand traps, so it wasn't as if it was, you know, core to its function. It will still be getting played at 1, of course, you know, to stop things like Maxi. The Pot of Prosperity, again, even in my version of it, I completely dropped the Pot of Prosperity. I wasn't even a fan of it. So again, I don't think this is going to make a massive impact to the deck and how it's played overall, as we can see quite a lot of finishes recently that haven't even been impacted by the ban list. Here's a top 16 in a meta weekly as well. So the deck's still very powerful. It's not going anywhere. This is still going to be a pretty solid contender moving into the new season, and it's not really going to be in any way impeded by the ban list changes. So again, overall, are we going to be seeing quite a few changes to the metagame? Absolutely. Like these are the top 10 finishes of decks in recent times. Virtually everything on this deck is going to be getting hit in some form or capacity. Some obviously much worse than others. No one really knows where Virtual World is going, for example. Eldritch get hit decently hard, Flounderies get hit decently hard, Prank Kids get hit pretty hard as well, and rightfully so. Like these are overwhelmingly popular and powerful decks. Now, what sort of things, if these decks are getting weaker, what types of things are going to be taking their place? We're going to be seeing more Dragon Link. Dragon Link is very powerful, and again has been on the rise. It's now found its way onto the tier list. Dragon Link is a very convoluted deck that just sort of tries to spam out, you know, high level synchro monsters, high rating rank link monsters. There's no one recipe for Dragon Link. It's pretty nuts, to be honest. The deck sort of goes off the rails a wee bit. There's also a lot of versions of it, like this version here playing in the Thunder Dragons, which I found very interesting and are definitely worth looking at. I'll need to make sure if there's any cards I'm missing here and maybe give this wee deck a shot. Grassed Screener is going to be pretty popular in these types of decks too, just to generate a whole ton of advantage. And as we can see, they're not really being that heavily impacted by the ban list. This one's playing like 1 crossout over the limit. He doesn't even have to cut anything. He's a 50 card. He just plays 49. He doesn't even lose anything. So Dragon Link, we're going to be seeing an increase in. In terms of other things, Madolche finding its way onto the tier list was extremely interesting. I haven't actually seen very much Madolche. I'm definitely going to have to do a bit more research into this to see what's causing the sudden uptake in its popularity. I would imagine it's something along the lines of obviously the Glass of Flute. I'm not going to talk out my ass about a deck that I don't fully know or understand, but this, if you are a Madolche player, again, jump on the wee website here, get looking over what people are doing, because this deck is on the rise. So keep an eye out for Madolche and pretty much everything else here, right? We're going to be saying, you know, there's Adventure Phantom Knights, which didn't make the cut in terms of most popular finishes, but it's still one of the more powerful decks in the list. This tier list here is going to be changing up quite dramatically over the next couple of weeks, I would say, when people start playing in their new cards and finding new decks to take advantage of the fact that everything else is getting generally weaker. So that's my input on the situation. I think, again, we're going to be seeing a lot of positive changes for the metagame very soon. I think this is a great thing going on. A lot of these decks, you know, and the fact that there are so many finishes with so many different kinds of decks shows that the metagame's actually in quite a healthy spot. Like, a lot of people want to complain about the meta. It is in a really good spot, so it is. Honestly, things are very varied. Prank Kids, of course, again, being one of the most overwhelming finishes, but it's not even representing that much of the Diamond minigame. It's more so tournament play that's causing that deck to see so much popularity and success. But in terms of the decks that people don't like, you know, like the Floenderies and the Eldritch, they're not doing that much better than the decks that people do like. You know, Live Twins, Virtual Worlds, things like that. So we're in a really good spot. Things are only going to get better after this ban list. The ban list that should have happened right back at the start of the game. I don't know why cards like Vanity's Emptiness were ever legal. There's no part in that card anywhere where it mentions fun. So lots of positive changes. And yeah, so I mean, that's my input on the situation. If you've got any opinions, if your opinions differ from mine, or if you want any additional input, feel free to leave your comments down below. I get round to everybody as soon as I can. Again, content over the next wee while is probably going to be a little bit slower because I will be leaving the UK here on the 6th of September. So things may be a wee bit sort of slower until or immediately after then, so bear that in mind. And yeah, that's all I've got to say, and I'll see you all in the next one.